On the evening of November 5, 1968, Election Day in America, tension fills the air. The country, still reeling from Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, riots, and the Vietnam War, is divided. The Democratic Party is fractured, and Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey are locked in a tight race. But then, as the returns come in, something unexpected happens. The South, long seen as a Republican stronghold, begins to surge for George Wallace, the third-party candidate from Alabama. His fiery rhetoric, appealing to Southern discontent and racial tensions, resonates with voters who feel abandoned by the federal government. With Wallace gaining support not just in the South, but also from working-class whites in the North, the unthinkable occurs. George Wallace, the segregationist former governor, wins the presidency. Like and subscribe for more. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell for more history documentaries. Please watch the video till the end, as good interaction would help the performance of the video and the growth of my channel massively. The decisive factors leading to Wallace's victory. In this alternate timeline, what made Wallace's victory possible? There were several key factors. 1. A divided nation. In 1968, the United States was deeply divided. The civil rights movement, growing urban unrest, and disillusionment with the political elite all contributed to a sense of disconnection from the government. Nixon, the Republican candidate, was seen as a law and order figure, but his appeals didn't resonate with the South as strongly as Wallace's populist, anti-establishment rhetoric. 2. Third-party success. Wallace's candidacy was bolstered by his strong appeal to the South and working-class whites in urban areas, who were disillusioned by both the Democrats and Republicans. His message of segregation and states' rights struck a chord with a large segment of the population who felt their way of life was under threat from federal intervention. 3. Weakness of the Democrats. The Democratic Party was in disarray. Humphrey, despite his long political career, struggled to gain traction in the wake of the chaos at the Democratic National Convention. The public backlash against the establishment only heightened the appeal of someone like Wallace, who promised to shake up the status quo. Reaction of the American people. The Southern states, which had long been the heart of Wallace's political base, erupted in celebration. For many, Wallace's victory represented a triumph over federal overreach and an affirmation of their way of life. The Bible Belt, particularly, viewed his win as a vindication of traditional values and racial hierarchy, reaffirming their commitment to segregation and resisting the advances of the civil rights movement. On the other side of the spectrum, African Americans reacted with anger and fear. Wallace's victory, in their eyes, represented a step back for civil rights progress, and many took to the streets in protest. The civil rights movement, already in full swing in 1968, would only intensify under Wallace's administration. Protests, sit-ins, and demonstrations would become even more frequent as African Americans fought to preserve their hard-won rights in the face of a presidency that seemed determined to roll them back. Wallace's presidency, a more segregated America? With Wallace in the White House, it's clear that one of his first actions would be to attempt to dismantle the civil rights advances made under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson. Wallace would likely use his executive power to block or delay desegregation in schools, push back against voting rights protections, and potentially appoint judges sympathetic to segregationist ideals. His method would be subtle but effective. The federal government would pull back from enforcing civil rights legislation, leaving it to the states to make their own decisions. Wallace might introduce policies such as school choice schemes, which could be used to reinforce segregation indirectly, or block enforcement of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Under Wallace, America's political landscape could shift dramatically. The two-party system might begin to fracture as his populist rhetoric attracts disaffected working-class voters, leading to a more fragmented political environment. The Democratic Party, reeling from the loss in 1968, could face further challenges, with more conservative Democrats joining Wallace's camp. Meanwhile, the Republican Party might struggle to redefine itself, especially in the face of a president who appeals to a different set of interests. Would the American Independent Party become a major political force? It's possible. With Wallace's victory, the third-party movement could gain significant traction, potentially becoming a permanent fixture in American politics. Former Democrats and Republicans disillusioned with their respective parties could flock to the new party, giving it the resources and political muscle to challenge the Democrats and Republicans in future elections. The 1972 election. Will Wallace stay in power? In 1972, Wallace would likely face a Democratic challenger, possibly from a more moderate wing of the party like George McGovern, Edmund Muskie, or again Hubert Humphrey. However, his support among Southern whites and disaffected voters in the North could still give him an edge. A suitable Republican candidate would be John M. Ashbrook from Ohio. Would Wallace remain president, or would the country turn against him? It would have stayed uncertain. The Vietnam War and the Cold War. Wallace's foreign policy, particularly regarding the Vietnam War, would likely be more hawkish. He would probably take a more aggressive stance in Southeast Asia, resisting calls for de-escalation and potentially expanding U.S. involvement. As for the Cold War, Wallace's administration would likely maintain a strong stance against the Soviet Union, but his domestic focus on segregation could prevent him from playing a larger role on the global stage. Would Wallace change his views on segregation? While George Wallace did moderate his stance on segregation in the 1970s, it's uncertain whether this would have happened under his presidency. Given the power he would wield as president, it's possible that his commitment to segregation would have deepened rather than softened. A presidency marked by resistance to civil rights legislation would likely have set the stage for a more entrenched system of racial segregation. The long-term impact of Wallace's presidency. A Wallace presidency would have lasting effects on American politics. The struggle for civil rights would continue, but it could take on a more violent and prolonged character. Race relations in America could become more polarized, with African Americans facing greater oppression and resistance from a government determined to preserve segregation. Furthermore, the success of Wallace's third-party campaign could shift the political landscape permanently, leading to a more fragmented system of government. The rise of the American Independent Party could challenge the dominance of the two major parties and alter the course of future elections. Conclusion: a nation forever changed. In this alternate timeline, the victory of George Wallace in 1968 would have shaped America in ways we can only begin to imagine. A more segregated and divided country would emerge, with political fragmentation, civil rights struggles, and a reshaped political system. Wallace's presidency would leave an indelible mark on history, one that would resonate through the decades. What do you think? Write your opinion and version of the story in the comments below. Please be polite and kind. If you want to know what would have happened if Ross Perot had won the 1992 election, click on the video on the left. Thanks for watching.